Let's talk about performance management.
It's a great topic, and there's evidence everywhere you look that says measuring stuff is absolutely important. And you can probably remember a few more than me, but I do know that my old mate David Allen in his Getting Things Done talks about the weekly review, and I think the M in DMAIC in Six Sigma talks a bit about measuring, doesn't it?
It does quite a lot. Yep. Measure, measure, measure.
I'm sure there's a few more reasons that people have told us that we need to measure stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what gets measured gets done is the old saying. But what I've also found is you can overdo it too. You can measure for measuring's sake. That's probably one of the things that I know in my early years I made mistakes on doing.
And that's one of the reasons that we don't do it, that the boss or ourselves get ourselves into a rat race of either measuring the wrong thing, measuring it wrong, or measuring it at the wrong frequency.
Yeah.
And it makes me despair that the accountants have got themselves into a ritual of measuring things 12 times a year on day 3 after month end. That seems to be very conventional to do.
Yeah, it's very it drives all sorts of other behaviors though that really need a more measuring behaviors that need a more consistent cadence than monthly. Monthly can be a lot can go wrong in a month.
Yep. And my heart reminds me that fortnightly is usually the right cadence for most things.
Yeah, it does seem good. I think we've talked about this before. Weekly is a bit too often. Monthly is a bit too long, and fortnightly just seems to fit in the middle there quite nicely.
Um, Snow White and well, no, it wasn't Snow White. The Three Bears, perhaps it was Snow White.
Goldilocks.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears. One bit of porridge was far too hot, the other was far too cold, so the middle one must be just right.
Yeah, that's it.
But thinking about other reasons that people don't like measuring stuff, a lot of effort, or as much effort, goes into trying to flex the numbers rather than change the outcome is one of the reasons. They've got that fixation, and I see it with some jurisdictions in COVID. It's all about numbers, mate. Did they go up or down?
Mm.
But could it just be the number is what it is, and there's a bit of random variation? Let's focus on getting people with the jab. Let's focus on building out the hospital's resilience. Let's focus on the impacts of reopening the borders.
I also noticed, one of the negative things about measuring was that the KPIs, this is in, large corporate mining, the KPIs were definitely there to be manipulated or and measured in a manner that was more favourable, and it was almost an expectation that you could manipulate things. So, for example, it could be something that needs to be, in the longer term, improving as a measure. You can manipulate it as a leader to get it to work really well for a few months, whilst you see out your tenure until you jump to the next job. Or more likely, what it was seeing some numbers like maybe the number of people employed and the cost of employing labour reducing during your 1 year in the management position, only to find that you were skimping on work that needed to be done. So the next person coming into the role is left with a bit of a basket case of a situation.
That makes me think 2 or 3 thoughts. One is you come across people whose career is wrapped up around taking credit for the positive random variation trends by measuring the right things at the right time in the right way. Tonnage went up. Well, tonnage went up because it was winter where there's less cyclones.
Yep.
Well, that tonnage went up, so my job is done. On to the next job.
Yeah.
There's the negative effects of you focusing on one measure. Let's say the big Australian picked truck availability as a measure. So, that encouraged them to instruct the contract labour force to drive the haul trucks around the circuit unladen, because that shows high availability but zero effective utilisation, which is something they don't measure.
Yeah. So there's good ways to manipulate it, that's for sure, to make it look how you want to. But I guess, back to this fortnightly measuring, what are we, if we're looking at that from a practical sense, what is that fortnightly measuring going to manifest itself as?
Well, an old wise miner trained me once to write yourself a fortnightly report. He said it's very simple. Write yourself a fortnightly report. Your leader might not want to see it, but certainly you and your team being able to understand the three things that are absolutely important and hold yourselves to account. What did I do? What will I do? And what are the risks, opportunities, and critical issues that I need to focus on?
Yeah.
And, weekly, many weeks, I only have 4 days of work in them for most people on a 5 and 2 roster, day work, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Fortnightly, you've got 10 or maybe 9 workable days to work on these things. So you can't just say, well, it was a 4-day week, so I didn't get it done.
Yeah.
A bit more of a courageous conversation. What did we deliver? What did we plan to deliver but we didn't get delivered? And what risks have emerged that we need to manage?
So that's interesting, because I think if you're looking at these things fortnightly, you're giving yourself just the right amount of time. Back to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's just right. That just the right amount of time also means that you've got to be pretty succinct with your terminology, I would expect, to make sure that you're clear about what you're doing, but also driving action.
And there's a difference between an activity and an action, which I was reminded once is quite a subtle difference for most people. But a not action is something like discuss.
Mm-hmm.
A action is something like confirm. So rather than discuss with the team the COVID mandate for mining, I confirm which of the team are currently unvaccinated and plan to do something about it.
Yep. Yeah. So it's very much. My feeling is then that the wording is actually psychologically is also, as a leader, making you much more cognizant of what you've got to try and achieve, and probably much more likely to actually take action out of it as well. Is that how that works?
It is. And David Allen came up with his copyrighted Getting Things Done, which is built exactly on that premise that you make a deal with yourself, confirm what you're going to do, understand that you're not going to do all of it, but understand that you are doing the vital few that must be done, and not putting your energy into the trivial many, as you called it before, measuring the wrong KPI. If you're going to let something go, let that go. And let's make sure that we get that number one thing that we need to do to deliver the product right first time to the client.
So to that end, then, you'd also be it'll be worth your while prioritizing what is on your report too. Would that be right?
The idea of ranking and ordering. So most important to lesser important is the ranking, but clustering together the things that are the same are the ordering. So it might be that my number one thing would be delivering the product to the client, which consists of the really most important deliverable, which is confirm production numbers and shipping date.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has that less important action to confirm the shipping date. I have to upgrade my shipping forecasting software. That would naturally be way down the list. But I rank and order it, cluster those two tasks together. They come up as number one.
Yeah. Okay.
And most of us are humans, at last I heard. So we're only capable of thinking about 7 plus or minus 2 things at a time anyway. So if your fortnightly report, that's the right size, we've discovered over time, to have that 5 to 9 to 10 range of actual deliverables. If you get more than that, you're not going to be able to remember them all.
Yeah.
If you've got less than that, you're probably not breaking them down enough.
Yeah. Okay. They're a bit too high level, possibly. Yep.
Ship product is an action.
Yep.
But it's likely not at the level of the work that you actually need to do as a leader.
Yeah. There's a lot that can go on behind that statement that potentially could be quite massive. So yeah, the ability to break it down sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
And no, we wouldn't be talking Lean and Six Sigma if we didn't talk to the Shoe-Heart cycle, the plan, do, check, adjust.
Yes.
And you can think of the fortnightly report next fortnight as the check, adjust cycle of your plan.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So you could use your fortnightly report to help you execute even on things that have been designed in your, say, your annual business plan or strategy, or maybe even in your quarterly review of the business plan and strategy. You could actually be using the fortnightly report to really drive a bit of, rubber hitting the road and making a difference, as opposed to being something that maybe gets discussed monthly at a board meeting, but probably more likely doesn't even get talked about until quarterly.
So when you think of the fortnight, it chunks quite nicely into a quarterly, a semi-annual, and an annual report to yourself. Or if you need to actually do a quarterly report, you just lay out the appropriate number of fortnightly reports there and pull out from the action column all of the actions that you delivered. And then you can rank and order them from most important to less important or lesser important delivery. The quarterly report then writes itself.
Got it.
Quarterly forecast could be a reflection of the things that you intended to deliver, which then fall into each of the fortnightly report deliverables. So a check from time to time of your fortnightly report is, do I have an action that I've committed to in the quarterly report that hasn't folded yet into the fortnightly report action list?
Yeah, got it.
And your report then is the summation of 3 quarterly reports. Those quarterly reports then can look at the annual report for committed actions that you planned to deliver to make sure, look, I planned to deliver that action this quarter. Need to make sure it's in that quarterly report and then maps into one or more of my fortnightly reports.
Yeah, yep.
But like Lego, you build your Martian base out of Lego from the ground up. So getting into the habit of, I plan to do this fortnight. What did I actually achieve in the last fortnight? What are the risks and critical issues that have emerged? No one's fortnightly report in December 2019 would say, prepare for COVID lockdown this quarter.
No, definitely not.
That pops up at the appropriate time as a risk to manage. We're about to have a lockdown, or we are having a lockdown. What do I do now?
Yeah, what action do I take?
Yep. Looking into your organisation, looking to your team. Your team, your job is to support the team in executing the outcome. Them seeing what's in the fortnightly report for you as tasks that they do that are important, and acknowledging the risks and critical issues that they may also see. That can be quite inspiring for the team, showing them the fortnightly report. Your leader, board, your business owner, the bank, may not give a toss about what's in your fortnightly report. So sometimes just having a consultant like you, Daniel, being the conscience to ask the questions, that an actual action, mate.
Yeah.
Could get quite useful.
That's it. And I guess I'm figuring that once a leader actually gets started on the journey of the fortnightly report, once you get into a bit of a rhythm, it's pretty easy to do.
And that investment, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, plus a 30-minute conversation with a coach or your leader, you've got up to you've got a nominal 80 hours in that week to do actions. An investment of one of those 80 hours to plan and review the actions, PDCA. That doesn't sound like much, does it?
It's a tiny percentage, actually.
Absolutely scrawny percentage. But, you start creating this structure with your team. You may need, as the leader, to invest 30 minutes with 5 team members to make sure that their fortnightly reports and yours are aligned and in sync. All of a sudden, then maybe it's 3 hours, 4 hours of the 80, so still 5%, still almost trivial. But that bias to action, that execution edge, as another consulting company calls it, feels quite important.
I guess if if you don't have 5% of your week to actually touch base with the people who report to you and understand what's going on, and also coach them, assist them in getting their actions done, delegate things to your team, so that many hands make light work. Like, if you're not actually investing that time, then a lot of these things are either going by the wayside or they're falling to you. So you'll end up with a lot of wasteful activity on your hands without the concept of fortnightly reporting.
So, most of us revel in some form of structure to the week. There's so many variables out there that can come and clobber you. Having a basic pattern, a piece of standardized work that you can use to wrap your head around the knowns and the unknowns of what's coming up for you and your team. Fortnightly report is quite handy.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that might go a bit wrong with fortnightly? What are the things that we need to watch out for to make sure that it is effective for us?
So the actions may not always be actions, and we all slip up here. So, confirm, deliver, agree, they're all the actions, but it's inevitable that you have to do some non-actions on your path to deliver on those actions, to confirm with the team that the ones who don't yet have a COVID jab have a pathway to get one, requires you to engage with each of the team, which requires you to schedule some time out of your and their schedule to have the conversation, and enough time, because inevitably there'll be a bit of emotion, and deal with emotion from team members is a task that you need to do with the leader, but isn't the actionable outcome. It's a pathway to get there.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting one, because leaders who are actually engaged with their team should be having regular one-on-ones with their team members already. And even as someone who's maybe, say, 2 steps away from a frontline team, you really should be having a touch base with every person in that team, quite often, because you may not have anything in common with them personally. You might disagree on their points of view and things like that, but you're still working as part of a team. So if you take that example, just from a sheer performance and are we heading in the right direction, discussing strategy, building professional relationships with your team, the problem that you've got there is that when something more serious, like we have a government mandate now to have everybody vaccinated, comes along, you're suddenly having to have that conversation for the first time with that person around that. And that's actually complicated because you haven't built the trust to start with. And if you're trying to, and this is actually more broadly, if you're trying to convince someone who's on the fence about to do something in their personal life, like if you're not already at a level in your relationship with them as a leader, convincing them to do something at work, to improve something at work, to make changes at work, just general, continuous improvement. If you're not at that level where you're having chats with them, where you're influencing them and helping them you're empathizing how they feel, you're helping them to see the other side and point of view of things, and you're helping them to make their own decision, which should be in the greater interest of the team. That kind of conversation, something as important as a health crisis is just as important if it's a continuous improvement initiative within the business. And continuous improvement initiatives in the business stick when the team is invested in doing them and making the change, not when the leader is invested in doing them. The leader gets to make changes and improvements that by making sure that people can't go backwards on what they're supposed to be doing, like putting in a new piece of machinery or changing the layout of a factory, or scheduling the work through production in a particular manner. But if you want to get a team to actually come to the conclusion that 20% of the movement we make in our process is waste, let's remove it. That doesn't come from you. That comes from them, because they need to maintain that new habit behavior. And so, I think the ability to break down the barrier of boss employee to be more, we're part of a team together. And yeah, sure, I lead the team, but you're part of coming up with the solutions too. Just opens a door for so much stuff.
So I see plenty of org structures that are traditional triangles. I hear a lot of talk from human resources professionals that talk about a fluid org structure, which, agile being an extreme case of that. With many clients, I just say turn the org structure upside down. That changes your mindset. So the CEO's job is to support the general managers who support the managers who support the frontline teams, who are the ones who are executing the outcome.
Yeah. And if you've given all your power away, I say that with the air quotes, if you're giving all your power away and empowering your team to do continuous improvement, what's one of the ways that you can stay in, air quotes, control without being in control? Well, it's having a really close understanding of how things are performing through fortnightly reporting.
And power is the illegitimate use of authority, is the traditional answer to your air quotes power. So we need to authorize the team to be able to execute the outcome, not get in their way.
Yeah. So it's the fortnightly reporting function is really giving you the ability to get out of their way, but still keep close enough to things that are important. And if you're a leader who's utilizing a coach, that coach is helping you to keep yourself accountable to moving towards that kind of mindset or that behavior as a leader. But in addition, if you use that reporting function, that reporting style with your team, you can delegate more and more of the opportunities for improvement and decision making to them and their teams. You're only serving to improve your ability to be flexible and help your team and their teams to do better, to do well.
So you have the virtuous cycle rather than the vicious one, where we're recognizing contribution. What did I deliver? Well, Bob and Jane, they were two actions that you delivered, but absolutely important to our team. They're on our fortnightly report. Well done. And the other virtuous cycle, Bob and Jane, I've let you down. This is actually a task you guys are completely capable of doing without me doing it. I'll stop doing it. you have the authority to get it done. Let's check in next fortnight. Are there any risks or critical issues we should overcome first?
Yeah.
Much different conversation than I'm delegating that to you, mate.
Mm.
It's I've done you a disservice by doing this task.
Yeah. So all in all, performance management, measuring, measuring just for the sake of measuring, or measuring so that we can understand performance. I think it is a nuanced thing where we sort of have this expectation of KPIs that are top down, but the reality is, if you use something like a fortnightly reporting structure, which really is just about pulling it back to what is the most important kind of clear things that we need to be taking action on, you have this opportunity to actually make a difference, not get stuck in any kind of analysis paralysis, and also really empower your team and your team's team to move the business forward.
Yes. Or if you're old-fashioned like me and you can't use the word power because it's the illegitimate use of authority, you authorize the team. You have my authority to go out there and get it done.
Yeah, and I think with the authority to actually get things done, you can see people's willingness to take on accountability increase dramatically. So people want responsibility. The reason why they often say they don't want responsibility is because in the past they never had a responsibility, but they still got punished for something that was really not their fault.
So you cannot be accountable for something that you don't have authority over. So, making you accountable for West Australia's COVID response is completely easy for me to say, but unwarranted in almost every dimension. You have no authority over the medical system. So how can I hold you accountable?
Yep. Yeah, I'm really only accountable for me and my team.
Yes. So, the boss's job is to remove the roadblock that stops people from being awesome.
That's a good way of putting it. I like it. That's really good.